Hello, everyone. Happy Monday here on the Wolverine.com podcast. Anthony Broom with Chris Ballas and a decked out and Detroit Lions black, silver, and blue Clayton Sayfie. Fun time to be a fan of sports in the state of Michigan. Of course, Monday Night Football, Detroit Tigers heading to Houston, hoping maybe there's some postseason magic that the Wolverines left behind from Houston. Sprinkle a little fairy dust on the Tigers down there. And Michigan is 4-1. They're going to head out to Seattle this weekend for the first road trip of the year. Exciting, intriguing times. Still don't really know what to expect from this team moving forward, but a big road trip, big opportunity this weekend against the Huskies. Of course, coming off a win this weekend over the Minnesota Golden Gophers, where game script, basically the same as last week. A little bit different in the way they got there, in the way things could have played out late, but win is a win. They're 4-1. It's crazy to believe we're 6 weeks into this season already, and a lot of questions about this football team still, fellas.
Yeah, and you forgot Michigan State, which was within 31 of Ohio State and proved they were back, according to a couple of local columnists. Even though I think Ohio State had their starters out for most of the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
They were defeated with dignity, it appears.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much dignity, but apparently that means they're back. So great day, great weekend for all fans in the state of Michigan. So, but the Tigers are the ones I got my eyes on right now. I'm excited, even though they're playing down there in Houston. I would rather have them they had played Baltimore, but we'll see. Just get there. We say that, but now we want more, right? But tonight it's about the Lions, guys. I'm excited it's about time. I've lived my dreams. I've seen a World Series. I have seen multiple Stanley Cups in my prime. I've seen the Pistons in my prime win 3. So it's your turn, fellas. And so I am very happy to see you guys enjoying this.
Yeah, I saw Anthony and his fiance at the Tigers game yesterday. So that was pretty cool. Over 40,000 people at the game on Sunday. And it was completely meaningless. Not for the reason you would think maybe 2 months ago that game was going to be meaningless. Fan Appreciation Day, regular season finale. It's because, the Tigers clinched 2 days before. So that was awesome. Dusty May threw out the first pitch at the game. So we got to cover that and talk to Dusty a little bit on the field there. But something special is going on in Detroit. They got Mike McDonald and the Seahawks tonight, the Lions, and then the Tigers in the playoffs. But yeah, Michigan with 3 straight wins now as well, which is obviously fantastic, and headed to what should be a really cool road trip here for us and the team and all the fans going as well. Big Ten country of Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, we will talk about, get some early thoughts in on that matchup. Obviously, we're coming to you on a Monday, pre-recorded this week, but Sherrone Moore's Monday press conference, some quick hitters there, some injury updates. We will get to all of it here on the Monday edition, and your questions at the end, as we do every week. A lot of great ones from our subscribers over at the Fort, which if you want to be part of that, use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for $1. A lot of people getting in on that. Join the conversation. And as you would expect, a lot of takes about this team, a lot of takes about the state of the program, Michigan basketball heating up the next few weeks. Clayton and I will be in Chicago on Thursday for basketball media day. So we're getting into double dip season, fellas. But before we get into what we are here for, we want to talk about our friends over at HomeFieldApparel.com. Our friends at HomeField hooked us up last week. I think we all have separate little care packages on the way from our friends at HomeField Apparel. I got the subscription box coming. Also, of course, me, proud of my school, proud of my alma mater. One piece of my collection came in today. It's a nice little baseball script Central Michigan shirt. So if you want to support the Chippewas, support your directional schools,
that would look
and
good
support
on
Michigan as well.
That would look good on the sideline of some game, something like that.
Hey, maybe it comes out Saturday. You never know.
Especially with the beard and the glasses.
Yeah. Do you have any Ray-Bans?
Like we've established in the past, the resemblance really is uncanny. It could have been anyone there. So I got the platinum boxes on the way. I mean, that's going to be awesome. Undefeated Michigan 15-0 hoodie, nice long sleeve shirt, short sleeve shirt. You've got the trucker hat with kind of the sailor bear on it. A couple other cool items in there. The platinum pass, which gets you 20% off a premium Michigan football releases throughout the 2024 regular season. That the platinum box, the football boxes, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. So get in on that today. Use the promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order over at HomeFieldApparel.com. We love working with those guys. Again, been singing their praises for years. It's the most comfortable stuff in my collection. I say that completely objectively and amplify that even more now that they are partners of us here at the Wolverines. So use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order over at HomeFieldApparel.com. All right, fellas, we heard from Sherrone Moore on Monday. Again, I think when you watch the replay of that game and then see Sherrone's comments after the game, obviously you're happy for the win. You never apologize for a victory, but especially on the Fox post game, there was like a palpable sense of kind of being a bit, quite frankly, disgusted about the way that Michigan closed out that game. And now you barrel into a week where you're going on the road for the first time. And I think it's an interesting spot for them because when you go on the road, it tests your discipline. It tests your attention to detail. It tests your connectivity, all of those types of things. And I guess heading into this first road trip of the year, which in years past, it's been week 4. Last year, the last few years, I think it's week 5. This year, it's week 6. So kind of an interesting situation where you're almost a month and a half into the season and you haven't even left Ann Arbor yet. Before we get into Sherrone Moore, I guess just thoughts on this spot, and we'll do our research on Washington this week. But how do you feel about them in this spot this weekend?
This weekend, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see Michigan go on the road here, coming off of a few straight wins. Still some meat on the bone, though. You feel like in all those games, the second halves have been an issue where Michigan just has not put together 60 full minutes of really good football and high-level execution, and really executing the way that they can. They executed really well in the first half against Minnesota, especially defense and special teams. They executed well in all phases in the first half against USC. They executed pretty well for a while in that game, really 3 quarters against Arkansas State until things went south. A lot of that was the reserves on defense, but they've got to figure out a way to play a full 60 minutes because you can't play a half or 3 quarters on the road when you're playing a team in a hostile environment that's trying to get some revenge on you from what happened on January 8th in Houston in the national championship game. So it's going to be a challenge. Jed Fish and Steve Belichick and all those guys out there, they're going to have their team ready. But I do feel like Michigan has a lot they can improve on from this game. At the same time, you should be happy about a win. I thought it was actually kind of surprising to see Sherrone Moore's interview after the game on Saturday with Fox and how disgusted he did look. But obviously that second half will leave a sour taste in your mouth. But he said he had a meeting today with Jay Harbaugh, who's now the special teams coordinator of the Seahawks, who's in town for the game against the Lions. And, Jay reminded him about, hey, you should have some joy here when you win a game. At the same time, understand you have some things to work on. And as Alex Orji said after the game, those are the best kind of wins. When you win, you still have things to work on. Obviously, you'd rather be dominant, but they were able to come out with a win, and that is absolutely crucial as you go forward here.
Yeah, and this is why if you look at Washington's schedule, and I just looked at this today, holy cow, is that a brutal schedule that they've got? Maybe somebody can call it up because that is this might be their second or third most winnable game on their slate. If you look at the way Michigan's playing right now, this is really kind of a must-win game for them after they went out and they played Rutgers and they moved the ball up and down the field a little bit, but they could not get the ball in the end zone. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they come out in this game because the crowd's going to be fantastic, right? For Michigan, I couldn't agree with you more, Clay, when it comes down to playing full games. We still haven't seen one from this team. And the way they played for the first 2.5 quarters of that game was unbelievable, right? We can talk about the 107 yards in the first half. They got 3 short fields and they took advantage of it, right? So, or at least 2, and made the most of their opportunity. They got points, I believe, on the first drive of the second half, right? It took 7 minutes off the clock, if I'm not mistaken, and kicked a field goal. So, and that's fine. But you cannot turn the damn ball over, number one. And number two, you better be prepared. You can't be giving up touchdowns like they were to a Minnesota team that was really not what you're going to be seeing offensively. So, and they got to hold some of them to field goals at times. So you're going to see some more tempo from teams. You asked my question today at the press conference, Clay, of Sherrone Moore about teams trying to get them with tempo. We're going to see more of that, in my opinion. So it's going to be very interesting. It could go either way on Saturday. I'm fascinated as a litmus test game to see what this team is made of.
Yeah, I think for me too, when you really take a step back and look at the totality of this season so far, and in all 4 games that they've played, or in all 4 wins they've had, I should say, and maybe you could take the Fresno State game out of this too, but to a certain extent, you needed a pick 6 to kind of separate in that game. In all of these wins, the difference between closing out on a high note and kind of letting teams hang around until the very end has been the quarterback play. It's been one play here, a turnover there. I think something that's been a bit of an issue to this point is at the quarterback position, a bad play or a bad read gets made and the wind kind of falls out of their sails completely. And, that's on the quarterback position obviously, but I think the team response to that can be a little better too. Defense, again, they've been put in some tough spots at times. Think about that USC game, a couple short fields helped them get back into that game. But, for everything we've seen thus far, I can kind of buy into the idea that they're not far away from maybe starting to hit their stride. But I think the thing that's going to keep lingering over this team is the fact that the most important position on the field, you're operating out of a deficit there. And it's incumbent upon everyone else to kind of pick it up. And I think the question right now is the multi-million-dollar question is that going to be too much for this team to overcome to get to 9 wins, 10 wins, or is it less than that? Again, you look at Washington's schedule. Yeah, you're going to get their best shot. They're at home. The rest of the way, they go to Iowa. They go to Indiana. They play USC. They go to Penn State. They play UCLA. They play Oregon. Like, if Washington doesn't win this game, you might be looking at only winning 1 or 2 more games the rest of the year at best. So you're going to get their best shot. It's a bit of national championship rematch in terms of the name on the front of the jersey and the helmets and all that. But these are 2 completely different teams, and I'm really interested in seeing how both of these coaching staffs get their team ready to play in this game. But the good news for Michigan, as we kind of segue into the quick hitters from Sherrone Moore's presser, injury-wise, it seems like good positive momentum for Josiah Stewart, Will Johnson, Samaj Morgan, Miles Hinton, Makari Page, all kind of seem like they're in play this week. Nothing seems long-term there. He did confirm that really the only long-term injury they're looking at the moment is Jaden McBurrows, which obviously there's been some reporting on that. Wes Walker working through something, Jaden Mangum working through something. A little thin in the secondary right now, but in terms of getting back some heavy hitters for this weekend, it does look like some reinforcements are on the way.
Yeah, which is great. You want to be healthy going out there for your first road game. There's still championship DNA on this team and guys that have been in those environments, especially on defense, that know what it takes to win games like that. And that's what makes me feel better about this one. You can't give up the big, stupid plays, the communication breakdowns in the secondary. We've seen too many of them now in the last couple of games. That if you do that, you're going to lose flat out because you don't have the offense to overcome it, especially on the road. That place is extremely loud. I remember listening to a game, guys, in the mid 80s, and it was coming through the radio. It was unbelievable. The transistor radio on AM radio. So, and I've heard great things about the environment there. So you will not be able to overcome that. At the same time, I feel good about this defense against this Washington offensive line. When I watched Washington, they look smaller. Again, they got beat up last year with the Joe Moore winning offensive line, and they don't have Michael Penix back there either. So that's what I feel good about going into this one. So I'm excited. I'm excited to go on the road. I love going on the road and covering a football team, but you just wonder what that swagger is going to be and how things are going to be when they face adversity, because you know it's coming. And do you go? If you need passing, because at some point they're going to be down in a game, right? And they're going to need to throw the ball to come back. Do you stick with Alex Orji or do you go with Davis Warren? I will not. People can get mad at me all they want to. I will say right now that I think Davis Warren is a better passer, and I think that he would give them a better chance in that scenario. So I think they are going to need both of these guys going forward. I really, really hope they get improvement from that position so this team can max out its potential.
The two biggest injuries for me last week it was Will Johnson and Josiah Stewart, and they both happened to be like two of Michigan's best defenders against the pass. And, Minnesota was able to get some things going in that second half with their up-tempo offense, with the passing attack in general. I thought Max Brosmer did a good job once he settled in. But I think it would have been different, had Will Johnson and or Josiah Stewart been in the game. TJ Guy did a pretty good job, but Michigan was kind of rotating in. You saw, a lot of depth at the edge position, Dom Nichols and, Keyshawn Bennett. Shout out him for blocking the punt, but he was also in there on defense, something you hardly ever see. Cam Brandt played quite a bit. So if they can get those two guys back, like it sounds like they will, if Makari Page is fine after going down in the game, if Miles Hinton on the offensive side at left tackle can play again after leaving last week's game early, like I feel good about Michigan's chances to play pretty well, like kind of how they have in some of the better portions of these last few games, as they've kind of built an identity and bounced back defensively from what happened against Texas. But they're going to have to figure out the tempo. That's on film now. I mean, they've had flare-ups in that area defensively over the last 4 years, and they've kind of corrected them, throughout the season. So they'll have to have an answer. But sometimes when you kind of have this, the backup D line in to start a possession, and then, Minnesota sees that and just, all right, well, once we pick up some yards, let's just go up tempo here so Michigan can't sub. And then, finally, maybe they can get the big dogs in, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and those guys at some point. But Michigan's got to have a little bit better of a plan there. Sherrone Moore, said as well, getting the call in quicker, making sure guys are lined up on time, before the snap. There were a couple times last week where some of the D linemen were standing up, before the snap. They got to figure that out because Jed Fish is going to take advantage if he can. But getting healthy is going to be big because they were missing. Michigan quickly and kind of quietly got pretty banged up like last week. And, having some of the guys back, Samaj Morgan, you mentioned too, Anthony, like it's going to be big for this team.
Yeah, and they get to the bye week and let's heal some guys up, right? So get through this game, man. You win this game, there's a lot of excitement still for the season, right? Especially if you get some of these guys back and healthy, and perfect time for the bye week, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this bye, like if you can get I feel like getting a victory is almost like grabbing 2 wins because you get to the bye, you survive, you're 5-1, you have time to get a little healthy, you have time to maybe take a step back and reevaluate things, especially. Again, like I said, I think this quarterback thing is going to kind of linger over them all season long. And then you get to regroup and you get 2 weeks to prepare for an Illinois team that is good, but maybe not, Penn State kept them in check a couple weeks. Of course, you got to go to Illinois. You get a Michigan State team that, I guess is better, but I mean, they're going to talk about the Big Ten not doing you a solid. You get to host Ohio State, and 6 days later, you're on a flight out to Oregon to take on, another elite team there. So who knows what they're going to look like by then. October, really tough month for them. But to me, when you take a step back and look at what this team could be and what the objective is moving forward, get to your bye week, find a way to get to 7-1, and see how ready you are for November football, because that Oregon game, the Indiana game is going to be a dogfight. You got Northwestern in there, and there's another bye in there somewhere. And then you get to play Ohio State, which really will test how far you've developed as a team. So, like I said, overall, I think with where they're at right now, you're seeing some areas stabilize. You're seeing some areas get better. You're seeing a couple key areas just kind of be stagnant. But we often comment on the state of the team based on what we currently see without taking into account there's just so much more data that's going to come in here soon enough. And, the story of this season is still yet to be written. So other quick hitters from Sherrone Moore here said that they've altered their practice plan to make sure the passing game gets a chance to improve a little bit more. He said they made some kind of change before the USC game, and he was happy with how things went. Didn't say what that change was. We're not going to divulge what that change was, of course, but second half struggles have nothing to do with a speech needs to be had in the locker room. just thinks guys need to execute and finish better. Keys to winning on the road: pack your defense and run game, play sound and discipline. He said that his team is excited to get out there and playing away games. You get to take all the distractions of playing at home, your family members flying in, all that. You're a little more secluded in your own cocoon. Some praise for the Washington defense. Brandon Hillman, praise for him as a guy that stood out as an athlete. I guess is there anything else that stood out about what Sherrone said on Monday? I think pretty meat and potatoes press conference from him.
Yeah, using two backs. He said they'd be doing more of that going forward. So I thought that was good. And you got to use your weapons, right, and put them in positions to succeed. So I think Donovan Edwards could have a big game out there against Washington. In fact, I'm counting on it. He might be my dark horse prediction for offensive player of the game next week, since I think I've nailed them both in back-to-back weeks here. We'll see. Stay tuned for the Thursday show. But that was about it for me. And they seemed confident. He said that the guys were coming in. They couldn't wait to get on the road. Guys, this is an exciting one. I'm excited to go out there with you guys, and it's going to be a great game, I think.
Yeah, we're eating at a Brazilian steakhouse too on Friday night. First time for me.
It'll be Clay's first Brazilian.
Yeah, that too.
Oh boy,
completely separate to the meal, but
what?
The dinner should be good too.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't say that. What's the matter with you guys? Okay,
but no, I mean I agree with all that. I also the Donovan Edwards, the two-back package was great to see. I think they realized, hey, if we are going to go with Kalel Mullings as our starting running back, which seemed pretty obvious based on how he was producing in the first 4 games, then they start Kalel. He was kind of the workhorse, 24 carries. Nobody else had 10 carries in that game. Well, let's use Donovan Edwards a little more creatively. Hey, we got some snaps to play with here, right? Part of when it was kind of 1-2 punch sort of thing, and we'll see how they handle it going forward. But part of that was probably, hey, let's, instead of playing them both together, let's let one of them rest while the other one's out there. But if you're going to be playing Kalel a lot and Donovan can still go and give you some stuff, I mean, that play, the longest, Donovan run from the last game when he comes motioning out of the, from the left side of the formation and, comes around to the right, Kalel's left of Alex Orji and gets that handoff, kind of a counter play. That was awesome. I mean, more stuff like that would be great. So it's good to see, and Sherrone Moore said more of that will come, more of the two-back package. So that'd be great to see for Michigan, because Donovan Edwards is one of their better playmakers. And man, your prediction there on Donovan having a big game, I don't know that I really predict or can picture him playing well against Washington. That's just a tough matchup for anyone. Oh wait, Donovan has played pretty well against Washington in the past, so that's one of those things in this game too, where they're going to be watching that film from last year's game, I guess January 8th, and they're going to see number 7 out there, and they're going to have to figure out a way to tackle him, because if he gets any space, he is liable to go.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go question heavy today, because we asked for them earlier. The Fort stepped up. We've got an entire thread here of a lot of stuff to get to. So we'll just kind of get through it all here. Not get through it all. We're happy to be here, of course, but a lot of ground to cover. We'll start with this one from AM89. He says, seems like there's a lot of sloppiness from both Washington on the road and Michigan at home this past week. Which team do you think will get more cleaned up? He says, also, after years of us out adjusting opponents in the second half, it seems now that the inverse is true compared to the stabs our coaches have faced so far. How confident should we be that our coaches can narrow that gap this week?
Hopeful. I would really lean towards the home team in cleaning things up, especially for a team that hasn't gone on the road yet, right? In Michigan with a lot of new starters. I think they're going to be, you got to avoid the false start penalties, guys. And I'm not so confident that they're going to do that. You can't put Alex Orji behind the sticks. You can't have 1st and 15s and 2nd and 12s and things like that and expect to have successful drives. So that's one of my concerns there. The second half concerns are noted and are real. I think we all noticed in the second half, the first drive of the second half for USC, Michigan seemed to be resting a lot of its first string defensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken, on that drive. Is that correct? I don't think Mason Graham was out there at times. I don't think Kenneth Grant was out there on that first drive of the second half. I think they were going deep into the depth chart. And I'm thinking the first drive of the second half, you want your ones out there wreaking havoc. And so I think they got a little bit too lax there. They were up 14-3. That's when you really need to set the tone. And I thought USC out-adjusted Michigan in the second half. I thought they replaced one of their linemen so that they could pass block better and really controlled that game for the better part of, well, all but one play and a handful of more in the second half of that game. So to me, it's going to be tough. And that's why they need to get off to a good start. This defense cannot give up big plays. Special teams need to be better, guys. There were a couple punt returns, one huge one on Saturday, where if you give one of those up on the road, you're going to lose. So, but I am concerned about the second halves of games, and they need to be at their best in both halves to win at Washington. This is the game that I kind of predicted to be the trap game before the season started. I knew that it was going to be tougher. Knowing now, it looks, I think Michigan's an underdog, if I'm not mistaken, Clay. So, and, somewhat surprising at this point, but Michigan still has a lot to prove.
Yeah, and I will give credit to Coy Parrish, the Minnesota punt returner. He's an incredible returner, and only a freshman, top 100 recruit. And he got out and really kind of changed the complexion of the game with the 60-yard return as well. Just kind of kept that Minnesota momentum going. But as far as Michigan, it's always tough to say, like, what is the cause of what happens in a second half compared to a first half. Last year, they didn't allow a point in the third quarter until, late in the season. I can't remember exactly when. The year before, I mean, the first half versus second half splits were incredible, and everyone talked about halftime adjustments. I remember somebody inside the program kind of laughing that off in a way, even though they would be happy to take credit for that, but also saying, like, we kind of just do what we do, of course you make adjustments. You're making adjustments between series too when you're on the sideline, and you can do that even more now that you can watch film on the iPads down there. But what is really the reason for success or faltering in the second half? Is it conditioning? A lot of people credited Ben Herbert and his staff with that. It could be that. It could be, maybe it's just how they execute, the energy they come out with, whatever it is. Sherrone Moore pointed to the energy the other day and just having to execute. But it's really hard to pinpoint exactly without being in the locker room, knowing what they're told at halftime, and then seeing exactly what it is that they do to adjust on the field. So it's hard to exactly say, but I do think that both teams have a lot to clean up because Washington has not looked impressive at all. And, Michigan has looked impressive at times, not impressive at other points. So it's going to be interesting what new look team from last year's national championship game can be more ready to play in this game. And, again, like you said, Chris, I mean, going on the road for the first time, that offense in that environment where it's going to be really loud, the defense will have the benefit of being able to communicate better than at home. But the offense, this is going to be their first big test like this. And there are big road games down the line, especially at the end of November. So they got to get ready for it and handle it well and prove to themselves, give themselves that confidence that they can do it.
And I do believe Washington put up, 530 yards at Rutgers, if I'm not mistaken.
I'd have to look.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they moved the ball pretty well. 500 plus yards on a Greg Schiano team. You got to get the ball into the end zone, but they moved the ball, so they've done some good things. But you got to be able to put the ball in the end zone as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too is Will Rogers has not turned over the football yet this year. So they're getting good quarterback play. They're getting heady quarterback play, and that could be the difference in a game like this. Yeah, Washington, 521 yards of total offense. They were 2 of 12 on third down in the game, which really, when you look at how close it was, that is what decided the game. So got to get off the field. As far as the adjustments go, we don't know how they adjusted in the locker room last year. We just know that when they came out of the locker room, things would typically look a lot better. And that hasn't been the case to this point this season. So we'll see what happens there. CT Blue 72 says, what place finish would you predict Michigan to be in the Big Ten? What teams would you put ahead of them? How many wins do you now project for the season? Yeah, I mean, because there's 18 teams, it's tough to predict what place they'll be in. But who would I put ahead of them? I mean, Oregon, Ohio State, Oregon for sure. I'd still put Penn State above them. I'd probably put Indiana above them right now. I feel like, am I missing someone? Rutgers, maybe. I mean, where
Maybe, maybe even USC. It depends on the schedules. That's the thing. Look at freaking Rutgers' schedule, right? They don't play anybody. Indiana, I think, has a relatively easy schedule. So, and they're better than we thought they were. I don't know what the rest of Illinois' schedule looks like this year, but they're going to have an opportunity. So this could be a middle of the pack team. I think this is an 8-win football team at this point. And a lot of it's going to depend on what happens on Saturday, guys. So if they could get to nine wins with this team, with this offense, that would be pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'd go with 8. I predicted 9 before the year, but I'd probably put them down 1 win just based on some teams looking better than I thought. And Michigan, despite losing the Texas game and winning against USC, like I predicted, hasn't looked as good in between, in those games. So I'd go with 8. I mean, predicting that the teams ahead of them or behind them or whatever, like you said, Anthony, I mean, there are 18 teams. All the schedules are so different that it's hard to actually do that without looking at them all and predicting every single game. So I can't really do that. But I do think they're kind of second, third tier Big Ten team right now with the chance to improve throughout the season. And, it's September 30th. So long way to go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think I had maybe the rosiest prediction of any of us. I picked them to win 10 games. They're not even close to that right now. It's probably closer to 7 or 8. I'll say 8 just because I think, they will hit their stride to a certain extent. But what is this team's version of hitting its stride? I don't know yet. I think we're 6 weeks in, and I still have so many unknowns about what this team could be. So tough to say. Good question. Good conversation to have. We'll move on to this one from Scoot says, QB play has been atrocious. Why not see what you have in a high floor game manager able to make short to intermediate throws freshman? And the only person he could be talking about here is Jaden Davis. And my concern with that is less about the player and more about the infrastructure. I mean, you need good pass blocking. You need good play calling. You need guys that are making plays in the passing game. And I do think that if you just drop him, forget what their depth chart is. If you just took what it is right now and dropped him into the lineup, I think you are stunting a young quarterback's growth. I think that you are potentially harming in his development. And I don't know how good Jaden Davis is going to be anyways. I think he is kind of more of a Cade McNamara type of quarterback. But that takes time too. I don't really for any sort of, and it's the same, to a certain extent, the same reason why I'm not just moving Jack Tuttle up the depth chart. Jack Tuttle needs to show he can stay healthy first and foremost, but I'm not confident that he could stay healthy when you drop him behind an offensive line that has struggled to pass protect. And, kind of this lack of an identity they have on that side of the ball at the moment. I don't think the infrastructure is good enough there to drop a true freshman or a guy who's been a bit injury prone at this point. I don't know that is going to be, that would be the jolt that this offense needs. I think that your path is going to be improvement from the guys that we've seen play so far.
Yeah, I agree. And who's to say that Jaden Davis is low floor or high floor? We have no idea. So Tuttle to me I don't think he's going to contribute this year. I think the injuries have limited what he can do in terms of velocity with his arm from what we've heard. Jaden Davis, I have not heard anybody say in that building say this guy is even the future, right? They're hopeful that he will develop, but anybody who's planning on him being the starter next year, I don't see it. And that is not disparaging the kid, just to be clear. I think just they need better options, and I don't think he's the guy. So to me, he's nowhere close to ready. And the fact that we haven't even heard him being other than a scout team quarterback at this point, when you've had the issues that you have at quarterback, is extremely telling.
Yeah, I think he's more in the competition with Jaden Denegolf for the third or fourth string job than he probably is to close to getting on the field. I mean, we're not at practice, but there have been no indications from the coaches who are at practice and make these decisions that he's anywhere near being able to get out there. And Chris, you couldn't have said it better. I mean, who's just to say that he's high floor just because you haven't seen him, right? Like, it's always the case with the quarterback or any player you haven't seen yet, where it's like, oh, he's got to be better than what we got. It's like, well, maybe not. I mean, there are people who watch these guys play on a daily basis that don't think so, that are a lot more qualified than the rest of us. So I would trust the coaches on the development of the freshman quarterback, but certainly they got to be better at quarterback. So I think thinking about these things and asking that question is totally fair. But I just don't think that's really a realistic possibility right now.
Yeah, and I don't want to put a kibosh on like how good the kid can be and what he actually is, and I'm not putting any expectations on him at this point because he's not in the plans and he's not there yet. But I think I have to be careful how I say this. I think a lot of people during the recruiting process were seduced by one outlet ranking him much higher than the other recruiting outlets did, and one that kind of at times has had a history of favoring players that go to their camps and things like that. I think that's more of an industry issue. Jaden Davis is not a 5-star guy. He's not what JJ McCarthy was. And, JJ McCarthy was ready to play as a true freshman because of the infrastructure. And I just go back to that. And
JJ was a 4-star.
Exactly. But JJ was like a top 30, top 40 prospect. I mean, we're looking at a guy that you just look at our industry ranking. He's the 106th ranked player in the country. He was the 8th ranked quarterback. Like, it's not one of those guys that was like a pro at the prom that you're just, it's just a matter of time, right? Like, it is going to take them some time to develop him. So I'm not even really entertaining the idea of that at this point. So we'll move on to this one from Wiley Coyote, who says, now that we're 5 games in, what are the differences between how Wink runs his defense versus the past 2 coordinators, Minter and McDonald? It seems like people are focusing on the blitz rate, and that is overly simplistic.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in fact, as Wink said last week, he said, the blitz rates aren't the blitz rates that you're seeing, and some of the people that are calculating these things are counting, he said a 4-man pressure is a 4-man pressure, right? When in terms of if you drop a defensive end and you bring a linebacker or something, you're still rushing 4 guys. That's not a blitz. So I think some of it is that his looks are more in who he sends on pass rush, at least as I've seen it. This is something that we would have to break down, but in terms of bringing pressure from different areas and providing different looks, I think he has more of them, honestly, than Jesse Minter did. And in fact, PJ Fleck talked about that in the post game, and he said it's really, really hard to get a read on what he's doing in terms of based on the way he's lining guys up. So I think Jesse Minter, a lot of the times when he simulated pressure, was dropping a ton of guys into different areas. And that's the way I see it anyway, was like, okay, so that quarterbacks had a really, really hard time understanding where to go with the ball because there were guys in places that they didn't expect. At least that's the way I see it based on what I've seen with my naked eye. And again, of course, this would be we'd have to break down film to really get into the nuances. And we can ask our resident coaches, Mr. Shark and not Tom. Those guys do an incredible job breaking down film too. So, but that's the way I see it right now.
I think you're absolutely right with the amount of different positions that he sends guys from, more safety blitzing. And Wink even said before the year that was probably going to be the case. It was going to be one of the differences is that he sends safeties more than Jesse did. Jesse sent the nickel quite a bit. I think that what Michigan did under Minter with a lot of the twists and stunts up front, they did probably more of that. Wink likes to show the linebackers pretty much on every third down. And then, sometimes they drop, sometimes they go, sometimes it is a blitz, sometimes it's a simulated pressure. But it's interesting. And they're playing a ton of zone, obviously, as we can see, which is similar to what Jesse Minter too did as well. So that's one of the similarities. And I think it's suited this defense pretty well. I think ever since they started to go with more zone the last 2-3 years, but especially 2, you've seen more turnovers, guys being able to, look at the quarterback, look at the football, not have to turn around. Sometimes when they do have to turn around, they make an incredible play like Jair Hill did, or Yair Hill, as Gus Johnson would call him. But, I think, it's an adjustment for Wink too, coming back from the NFL. And I know he's a confident guy, but I think he's probably figuring out what works and what doesn't too, just like Steve Belichick is on the other side for Washington. So it'd be, all sides of this chess match this weekend will be really interesting. A lot of NFL backgrounds between Jed and Wink and Steve Belichick and a bunch of different coaches trying to go at it here this weekend.
Let's move on to this one from Blue is Gold. Throwing a little basketball talk in here. Aside from recruiting updates, any recent good news coming out of the men's basketball program?
Yeah, I had a guy at practice this weekend, and I was going to put up an update. He said Sam Walters improves every time he sees him. He says the kid's really shooting the ball well and shows a little bit more improvement. So that would give Michigan one more guy that, we hadn't heard a whole lot about who is impressing. We know that the big men are going to be good. Danny Wolf has shown quite a bit. Vlad Golden's going to be one of the best in the country. And then he continues to tell me that if you just went to practice, the best guard they have is LJ Kaysen, and he doesn't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes it's a bad thing when a freshman stands out, but if you're playing better than Trey Donaldson, and we're not saying this is consistently the case all the time, but if you are doing that, then you are going to be pretty damn good. So I think they have more options than they thought they were going to have. I think LJ Kaysen is a future star. And I think this team's going to be really well coached and really fun to watch. And he said there's a lot of talent on this team. Roddy Gale, he says, continues to improve as well, be more aggressive. And he thinks this team will be very good defensively. They're in great physical shape. They are getting up and down every chance they can. This is going to be a fun team to watch.
I'm excited to see how much of the LJ Kaysen hype is real or hyperbole, right? In reality. And we'll see on that, because a lot of times you hear about freshmen in the offseason, that sort of thing, and then it takes a little bit of time, right? Even the shooting numbers aren't as good, even when they're open. It's just an adjustment playing in a college game, but it's great to hear, and it's also just a great indication with Kaysen of Dusty May's talent evaluations, because he was signed to him at Florida Atlantic. He got out of his letter of intent. Other schools came in late, tried to get him, but he decides to follow Dusty and Kyle Church and Coach Williamson and all those guys up to Michigan, which is nice to see. We'll have a ton more basketball later this week, as Anthony said at the top of the show. He and I will be in Chicago for Big Ten Basketball Media Day, so we'll talk to Dusty. We will talk to Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, 2 7-footers, as John Borton put it today when we were talking before the press conference. Over 14 feet of Michigan basketball big men will be in Chicago. And then there's Dusty May, not sure exactly what he is in shoes right now, but certainly going to be interesting to hear all the updates from him and fun to follow this team here. And they got the exhibition on October 20th coming up in Detroit.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. I can't wait for Michigan to lose a game on the football field somewhere and then everyone to start tweeting basketball school again. That was so much fun. About 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Really?
I want to go to this one, and Bloomer here asks, why doesn't Coach Moore wear our team's colors on the sideline? Did I miss something where Sherrone Moore is not dressed in maize and blue?
It's black, but I think Clay said too it might be a really, really dark navy. So I guess we can ask him if you'd like us to, Bloomer. But to me, it just you dress up in black, you bring a certain mentality with you that, hey, we're going to kick your ass, right? Like Michigan State, and it's all black. Didn't they wear black uniforms last year against Michigan in the night game?
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Clayton's wearing a black jersey right now. I'm afraid he's going to reach for the screen and choke slam me.
Exactly. So, see, guys that wear black are really intimidating, like last year's Michigan State team. That's my answer.
All right. I was just curious. I hadn't noticed that at all. We'll go to Go Blue.
It looks black to me, by the way. I wasn't the one that said that. It looks black to me, and I've been waiting to ask him once he's in maybe a little better mood. If they would have finished better against Minnesota, maybe today would have been the day. But there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I'll go to this one from Go Blue 0007, who says, what is going on with Trey Pierce? I thought we would see more of him this year. We did see him a bit Saturday, and we have seen a little bit of him, right? I think a lot of I thought maybe we'd see more of him too, but Ike Awuna has had a bit of a breakout season. Rayshon Benny, I think it's been outstanding so far this year. So I think just kind of the product of good depth there at this point.
Natural progression, right? Natural progression. If your veteran is playing well, then you're gonna have to wait your turn. And Ikawana has kind of earned some reps, and I'm happy for him. This guy has really reshaped his body and done a good job in there at times. So Trey will get there. He's a young guy, very young. So it is not the typical arch of a defensive lineman to come in here and really stand out in your second year. You earn your time. You look at some of these guys. TJ Guy, for example, is one of those who on the edge had to wait his turn behind some really good players. So I think it's just natural.
Yeah, I think Ike is playing his snaps, that a lot of us expected him to have this year. And Trey Pierce was banged up during the offseason at different points. So I'm sure that didn't help his chances, but Ike has stepped in there. They don't have great depth there, but it's serviceable. They're trying to keep those guys fresh, but yeah, I think he's just behind Ikawuna and kind of the fifth or sixth defensive tackle, him and Enoetta. So, and they have a bunch of time. Like you said, CB, I feel like recently it's either a guy will break out right away, right? Mason Graham. I mean, it's unprecedented what he's done from start to now in his career. But that third year, Mozzie Smith came on that third year. Chris Hinton, came on that third year. He probably shouldn't have left after that year, but so year 3 for those guys is probably big. And on Enoetta too, he didn't know what position he was going to play coming into spring ball, and they had 3 different line coaches in the span of 2 months, and then he adds a bunch of weight. So those guys will come along in time.
Absolutely. And again, it's defensive tackle is a tough position to play. I mean, you think about some of the guys they've had in the past that haven't developed right out of the bat, and you kind of explode later on in their career. So I think we'll end with this. We'll go a little shorter this week. This is from Rich also, who says, where and time for the Fort meetup? Why do fans vote? Well, first we'll get to that. For our listeners, for our subscribers, we will be at Petoskey's in Seattle at 3 p.m. local time on Friday. So it'd be fun for you guys to come out there. Just kind of a casual hang, nothing too crazy planned for that. Rich wants to know, why do fans focus on the failures of transfer portal when judging Orji and Davis? That has nothing to do with the week-to-week game plan. And then lastly, how does the DB health look? We kind of addressed that one earlier, but yeah, I mean, the transfer portal conversation, I'm kind of with him on that. At this point, you're 5 weeks into a season, 6 weeks into a season. What happened in the offseason is kind of irrelevant at this point. Like, you have to focus on what you have and not what you hoped you would be. Yeah, any thoughts on what Rich had to throw at us there?
I think it's kind of an "I told you so" thing, right? And I don't like to do that, honestly. I just had a feeling, and even our last chat before when everybody was pissed off when I suggested Davis Warren might start the opener, and I said, look, don't shoot the messenger. I said they needed to go to the portal. I really felt that. I felt strongly about that, and I understand timing and everything else, but yeah, and part of it is because this is the last time we're going to see Mason Graham in a uniform, and the last time probably Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson. And you want to go out and give these guys the best opportunity to win games and play for one more really, really good football team. And I really believe that position hindered them. And that bothers me a little bit. And that's all I'll say about that.
It's the same reason why people ask about Jaden Davis and hey, where is he at? And hey, should we throw him in there or whatever? The unknown just seems so much better than the known when the known isn't all that good. People say transfer quarterback. All right, well, what transfer quarterback? Certainly I think they could have upgraded there, but I don't know exactly who the options were or weren't. So it's hard to say. It's kind of like the backup quarterback phenomenon, but and also why do people bring it up if it has nothing to do with the week-to-week game plan? Well, the fans aren't coming up with a game plan, so we can talk about these.
Thank
things,
God,
right?
No offense. And thank God they're not.
Oh, absolutely.
Michigan had been running the air raid years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure that would work. So yeah, that's all it is. We wouldn't have a show like this if we couldn't talk about things like that. So we certainly appreciate people bringing stuff like that up so we can have some content here.
No, happy to talk about it. Always glad to talk ball. Just feels like that's well plowed ground at this point. And we're halfway into a season that technically is still on the rails. I don't know how long it will stay that way. I don't know what it looks like this week. No man knows the future, as a certain former head coach used to say. So I know what our future is right now. The future is that that's our show for this week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Obviously, a fun time to be a fan of sports in the state of Michigan. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content. Get in on the YouTube Premium so you can get in on the Ballast and Scheme show, and you can get in with EJ Holland's recruiting stuff. A lot of positive things happening on the trail there, especially, hey, you want to talk quarterbacks? EJ just did an interview with Brady Hart that's up on our site right now. So if you want to check that out, head on over to the Wolverine. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to the site for $1. Again, for Clayton Safey, for Chris Ballas, for our producer Megan, behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later this week when we preview the trip out to Seattle.